Great. Well, we got our players ready. Let's go down and watch the match. See which one of these players are going to come out on top. Their Simic 3 drop.
I
And
think
their
a
Mox
peanut,
Opals.
yeah. Speaking of I think a peanut butter and egg sandwich is pretty good too. I think they should check that out. It looks like they're still loading a bit in here, maybe a small error, but we get to see the hand still. You can see it's rigged. The scripts end. We just overlay everything. We pretend like they're real games.
Mhm, mhm. Speaking of eggs, we got a couple of geese on Arne's side here. And not much else. This doesn't exactly scream a powerful start. I mean, I say that when there's a Seed of the Synod and two Chrome Moxes and two Mishra's Baubles. Um,
yeah,
this is a heck of a hand in Mahjong, but I'm not sure whether or not I'm looking forward to keeping this in this matchup. How are you feeling?
well, I was going to say, if one of those baubles was an Oko, he had turn one Oko available to him, but had the
Mm.
two baubles, which meant kind of had to mulligan this hand. And this is sort of what Arnie's trying to do. You mentioned earlier, he's like, I'm trying to plop down the rings and Ursas and Okos and hope it's good enough. So we see him mulligan because he can't just risk keeping a hand that's basically three lands.
But can we risk keeping a hand that has no lands? Although we'd have a goose, we have a mox. It's
Yeah,
just
this is
a little awkward.
yeah, it's really awkward. I don't know how much you experiment with the like Chrome Mox Fair decks, but this is something I tried as well. And this is a problem I ran into right now, which was like, how do I get my card color count high enough to play Chrome Mox and still be kind of, a brown artifact deck, right? And this
Mhm.
is one of the issues where it's like, yeah, Arnie could bottom the Oko, but then, we're really hoping to hit two lands on the One Ring as we mold a five here.
This 5 does have some castable spells, good ones at that. We got an Oko, we got an Emery, we got a Force Negation. We're kind of cooking with this 5. I mean, maybe not, Mox Opal, Shuko, Nadu cooking. No Nadu from Arya's side yet. That Malevolent Rumble. But really hoping to dredge up a bird of sorts.
Yeah, and you're seeing Arya really getting a big advantage too from knowing the matchup. Because of the bans, Arya knew Arnie's playing this deck, and Arnie knew Arya was playing that deck. And Arya has a hand that is like not good enough against, I think, a lot of our decks, right? Like if
Hmm.
she was playing anyone else, turn one Dryad Arbor seems to be the play as of right now. Not a particularly impressive play. Thassa's Oracle in the hand is basically a mulligan to six. That's kind of a concession to Magic Online. In paper, I bet you Arya would play something like Noble Hierarch and just make a million copies of it with Nantuko. So this is sort of a hand where she's like pretty slow, but against this matchup, she can take it a bit slower.
Yeah, not a huge amount of pressure coming out
Mhm.
on Arnie's side, especially if we're mulliganing this deep. It's unlikely. I mean, Arya doesn't know that when they're keeping the hands, but it's unlikely when your opponent's down to 5 cards that we are going to see, a turn one Oko or being able to develop like a turn one Emery.
Mhm. And it looks like Arnie's really tanking on if he should keep this five. And I think he has some fours that are technically better, but I think it's basically you have to hit like, the perfect high roll, the Yahtzee. And it's
Mhm.
hard for me to blame anyone for keeping this hand and kind of just being like, yeah, I kind of hope that, Emery hits like a bobble and I kind of go crazy from there. But I'm going to have to see how Arnie does it. He's definitely one of the better players in the world. And Arya
Mhm.
really making her name for herself in that regard before joining Play Design. So this is really a battle of the Titans here.
We're about to watch some incredible Magic the Gathering. That's what
Mhm.
we're about to do. Even though it may result in the first couple turns may look a little iffy there with just potentially this Dryad Arbor hitting the table. Arnie deciding to keep, and there it is. Ah,
Burn one Dryad Arbor. You love to see it.
Arnie has drawn the One Ring, opted to keep a hand with a guaranteed, I'm going to say Oko on turn 3 there, without
Yeah.
not wanting to force a negation back up here. Are we looking to? Well, I was going to ask, are we looking to turbo out this Urza Saga?
Yeah, it looks like that's what Arnie's winning. Maybe trying to set up something like a turn three, float a mana, grab a Mox Opal, play the One Ring, as maybe part of what he's planning. Turn two, with the Sea of the Synod, we can play the Emery and have that going as well. So there's some stuff going on here. Arya is rumbling though, so we'll have to see what she can do, and has a lot of mana in hand.
Now, if we're Arya, what are we hoping to hit off this rumble other than, Nadu? Oh, a different bird. I see.
Yeah, it looks like Arya is deciding to take this gilded goose. That's going to help turn on her Mox Opal. So the malevolent woodlands, sorry, the rumbling woodlands is something that you would do maybe against a deck with a bit more removal. But in this spot, Arya just kind of wants to get the mana going. And with this gilded goose and Shuko, she's going to have a lot of mana available to her starting soon. And we might see her go for kind of the Springheart Nantuko, make a bunch of Dryad Arbors, get some mana, and as soon as we draw Nadu, start popping off as Ari picks up a Chrome Mox.
That's going to speed things up for Arnie here. Are we in a spot where we are looking to get this Oko down, or are we going to start making constructs? Gotta tell you, this Simic Oko deck or Simic Urza deck, depending on which broken blue artifact based card you want to focus on. There are a lot of options.
Yeah, you can do a lot of things. Looks like Arnie here is looking to try and find stuff, yeah, like an Opal or a Bauble that maybe allow him to use the One Ring and kind of take over. And honestly, Arya's hand is perfect from Arnie's perspective. She has a lot of it, but she doesn't have the thing that's actually going to kill him. So he has some time to try and find some interaction. And he could have slammed, the Oko down, but it might have been pressured a bit too much by the clunky hands and not good enough against, Nadu itself. So Arnie might be trying to plan to have a Nadu come down, hope it draws maybe a few cards, and then Oko it. As we're seeing Arya deploy the Gilded Goose.
Ooh, and the Shuko. Fortunately, we can't rumble with this Eldrazi spawn token, but we can play out a Thassa's Oracle. All right.
Yeah, and you're seeing Arya here get this to get some scrying, essentially some scrying on. And now later in the game, she can bestow a Springheart Nantuko onto that Thassa's Oracle in order to then, essentially win the game with its enter the battlefield trigger when a copy is made. What I'm curious about is, I guess Arya can in theory make infinite, or near infinite creatures. But if Arnie Oko's the Thassa's Oracle, right, and Arya Nadu's off, can he just chain One Rings the entire game and maybe just, deck Arya?
And we thought we were going to have fast matches all throughout the day, Nice little change of pace here as there is a Saga ticks up to 3, floats some mana. And you mentioned the Mox Opal. I got to imagine we're going to find a Mox Opal. That card is pretty egregious here.
Yeah, the only thing that jumps out to me is Haywire Might is maybe something where he wants to get rid of a Shuko. But I imagine with the One Ring going, it's just probably in his best interest to have that going. But it looks like he wants to take a bit of a slower approach. He's seeing that Arya, at this point, Arya knows, hey, if Arya had the Nadu, it'd be on the battlefield. So if I take this away, I'm making her have to have multiple draw steps. So maybe the plan is to do that instead.
I got to imagine if your Nadu opponent's turn involves casting Thassa's Oracle and equipping a Shuko to it, you feel a little bit, more comfortable knowing that there's probably not a bird in hand.
Agreed.
And we got a Chrome Mox imprinting the Oko, looking to ramp out that One Ring by the looks of it, and getting to do so with Haywire Might protection, as well as Beseju.
Yeah, that's my bad. I thought I only saw the Mishra's Bauble when we milled. So that's on me. This makes a lot of sense to grab the Haywire Might. And now you get the best of both worlds, Got a lot of mana, you have a lot of cards. Arya is down on both of those things. And while she can get some bestowing on a Nadu if she draws and gets a couple triggers, it's not the same as with a Shuko, as Arnie just draws right away.
Arya drawing a Seed of the Synod here. Looking to, I believe, bestow that Springheart Nantuko onto the Thassa's Oracle, like you mentioned there.
Yeah, that's the typical thing to win. We could have also saw Arya do a keep thing where she bestows onto the Dryad Arbor and then can spend mana to make more Dryad Arbors. And so they're still 1/1s, but they're 1/1s, with attitude, as it were. As we're going to see more Thassa's Oracles come down and get some sort of scrying-esque happening.
Is there any consideration to getting rid of the Springheart Nantuko right here, right now?
Yeah, I think that's totally valid. If you want to try and get that, it makes it so that, Arya has to have a lot of things going. We saw there, Arya, I think, bottomed all 4 cards. Didn't want any of those. and makes sense to kind of maybe take out that Spring Heart and Tuco. Once again, you kind of have all these different pieces you need to fight over versus the Nadu deck. So I could see it. Maybe you want to battle that way because you have this Boseiju you just picked up. But in that same vein, maybe Arnie just wants to wait and then, play it a little slower. And then once Arya puts a Nadu on the stack, be like, okay, these are the things you're weakest in. I'll take care of all those real quick. It looks like we are going to end of turn activate the Haywire Might.
I guess we're at a point here. We've got a ring going on. We've got a pretty reasonable amount of mana as well. It's kind of wild. This Botanical Sanctum is still going to come into play untapped, despite already going to have God knows how much mana. And we can get the Haywire Might. We can get the Springheart and Nantuko off the board. We can get the Shuko off the board.
Yeah, and honestly, I love that play that you're pointing out there of just, I mentioned maybe wanting to wait. Arnie's like, no, I'm just going to right now take her the Santuko, probably untap, draw my ring, and this pretty quickly, probably Haywire Might down the Shuko. And then now, if you draw Nadu, it's like, all right, well, you better have another one in hand. And we know that's not the case, as Urza's the draw.
Ooh, that's a large old man right there. That's that's going to apply not only pressure but also on the board like this, right? Where we are really just filled to the gills with mana here.
Yeah, one time I've played this format in the past was during the middle of the pandemic, and some friends and I, we played a little no ban list tournament amongst ourselves for fun. And one of the more surprising decks to me was when World's competitor Kane Reinhardt actually came with basically this deck minus the MH3 cards. And seeing how it actually plays, it's very impressive of how just good it is at like having all these different pieces. And now with the One Ring being added and Haywire minus a new tool, these decks just play real-ish Magic games with all these broken cards. And that's something that's just actually very powerful and feels often really underappreciated by the player base. It's just like, yeah, if your deck just functions and does a good job interacting with your opponent's deck, they're going to be put in a really tough spot from turn one.
As a fan of Tolarian Academy myself, a 4-mana academy is secretly still a 0-mana academy. If your deck is built around, doing that.
Yeah. Yeah, it's one of those things, right, where it's like, even if I had to spend like 4 on the academy, I'd be very happy to do it, right? And so getting this card is great. And yeah, we see Green Sun Zenith picked up, which, represents a Nadu, which is really nice here. But unfortunately for Arya, Arnie has done a good job of taking care of everything. And now we're going to see a hard cast Force Negation take down this Green Sun Zenith. And Arya has some beatdowns, but it's going to take a long time to actually win through what Arnie has.
Yeah, it's not the most exciting beatdown, but at a glance, we are hitting for 4 here a turn, and the ring is ticking down. But that Haywire Might has given us enough cushioning, and obviously, if we find our second ring, then we can really get it started. As Arnie draws another copy of Force Negation, and this is making me wish that I brought this deck. This is everything I want.
Yeah, this deck is super nice as we're seeing it get going. And I guess Arya's best bet for winning now is Arnie, doesn't find another One Ring, because the moment Arnie does, not only will we not have these burden counters hurting our life total, we can just start looping the ring. We can play a ring off the Emery, have that protection for forever, eventually get our Shadow Spear up Urza Saga construct and just start attacking.
I mean, right now we've developed, depending on what land hits the table here, an 8/8 token, which is just, that's massive. But the nice part about these Thassa's Oracles is that, well, they're a little anemic on the beatdown plan, but they will be able to chump block and give Arya some amount of cushioning, hopefully draw into the Nadu or something to find a Shuko or a repeatable target.
And it looks like Arnie is just getting that bobble trigger, seeing what Arya has.
Ooh.
Gilded Goose, standard all-star for a little bit. Not exactly what the doctor was wanting right now.
No, but I do appreciate that both, as a Goose enjoyer myself, I do appreciate that we have 7 copies of Gilded Goose between the 2 players here. As it appears as though the One Ring was a bit of a misnomer, as Arnie has the second ring here, the one that we mentioned. And this is, we got the 2 rings looping. We got a Force Negation just in case. Got this Urza Saga. We might even make a cheeky little construct. Yeah, why not?
Yeah,
Oh,
and you're seeing
okay.
Arne getting to, tap the Haywire Might. The pressure from Arya is just not enough to need to leave that up. It doesn't also need to be up. And now we get this construct, which is also you can tap to the Urza for more mana. It's just getting really out of hand really quickly here. Aether Spellbomb hits the battlefield.
Just layer upon layer of contingency plans here. Being
Arya
able
makes
to
a
say,
food.
yeah, well, that's not bad, Let's not counter out just yet.
Yeah, she's like, hey, you got like 20 mana, 40 cards, but I've got +3 life. So let's watch out here, okay?
You're not the only person that can make artifacts for 2 mana. Thank you very much.
Yep, yep.
But if I'm Arnie, I'm feeling pretty good considering my hand is so large you cannot see the entirety of it on screen there. I would just assume, if I were in the position of the viewer, that they are all broken Simic cards, which
Mhm.
usually leads to a pretty good position, if I may say so myself.
You may. I'll back you up on that one.
Thank you, and
And
thank you so much for always having my back, Mason. It
you and me, we
really
go way,
appreciate.
so I had to
Yes,
have to.
yes.
Yeah. All the way to an hour and a half ago. It's
Hmm.
ride or die with Wheeler here when it comes to me.
That means the world to me here.
Mhm. Speaking of the world, Arnie going in up a game here in No Banless Modern is going to mean the world to him because this format, these aren't the too much explosive decks in the world, but you really want to, have that chance that if you're going to have to play a game 3 to not be on the draw versus Arya's Nadu deck, right? We've
Mhm.
seen how strong Nadu is in current Modern. In this format with Mox Opals and Chrome Moxes, it just goes so fast. And that's going to create some real problems, I think, for a lot of people. So if Arnie can get this game, he gets to, at minimum, have one game where he's on the play again, and that can be the world here. And he's just making sure he doesn't lose anything, as now Arya is entering chump block mode as these contracts are going to start coming in every single turn.
And we're seeing Arnie play out duplicates of the legendary creatures just to get their enter the battlefield triggers popping off, which is another cause for worry. If
Yeah,
your opponent's willing to throw away an Urza, they're like, I don't need a backup. I'll just make another construct. I'll, really get the pressure going down here.
exactly. And we see
Ooh, got
Arya
a
draw another Gilded Goose. Not really what the doctor ordered still, but this is going to give Arya some time. And from her perspective, she hasn't seen a One Ring, I think, in the graveyard yet. And so I think she's feeling like her best bet of victory is to get, the One Ring to kill Arnie. We know that's not the case. And I would not be surprised if we see something like a concession here once Arnie shows like, hey, I've got multiple. I was just kind of setting up my hand first. As
Mhm.
Arnie has drawn like a lot of pseudo mana sources because his deck just plays a lot of pseudo mana sources.
Right. A lot of cheap. I mean, we have just a lot of free mana in the form of Chromox and Mox Opal, but basically anything that's an artifact is going to be able to provide mana given this Urza.
Mm-hmm.
Oh, and we have the back. We got an Oko here. We've got a backup in the for well backup to our backup to our backup in the form of the Otawara as well. This is we're sitting pretty.
Yeah, and one of the things we talked about, mind you, by the way, this was a mold of 5 for Arnie, right?
Mhm.
This game, did not have it all going perfectly. Definitely started on the back foot, was on the draw, but has pulled it out, really showing how strong his deck can be. We mentioned earlier how the Chromox can be sort of awkward in these decks, right? Because you have to have the card with the color, but Arnie only has like 22 cards in his deck that actually go to Chromox, but with the One Ring, it's just not a problem, right? You just have so many excess resources. It's like, okay, I'll turn this Gilded Goose just into this, artifact for us as 3 14 constructs come smashing in here. And it's not going to take much longer before Arya is not going to be able to sort of chump block here.
Looking to throw the Thassa's Oracle and one of the geese under the bus here.
Yeah, makes sense. I believe Arya's deck it has 1 endurance. So she's not out of the game yet. Now that the Oracle is in the graveyard, she can endurance it back. We mentioned before how Oko elking it could have potentially been a problem. Didn't play out that way. And by the way, Oko elking might be what's happening to Arnie's food tier pretty soon as he just makes more attackers. We're going to have to see what he wants to do here with all these resources.
We are now casting the third Urza, Lord High Artificer, making a fourth construct up to 15/15. No big.
Hmm.
Not in one shot territory yet.
The danger is so
Yet.
close.
Yet.
Yeah, yeah,
Yet.
yeah. Arnie has stretch goals. It's like a it's like
Mhm.
a Kickstarter. And it looks like we are casting Oko Thief of Crowns, which also, makes the food. We talked about maybe elking, but foods are just, lotus petals in this situation, right? Like tap, well, or mock sapphire, I should say. So Arnie has a lot of resources here and is in a really good position, all things considered.
Yeah, any artifact hitting the board, just generating more mana and also just generating more pressure off the card constructs here.
Yep.
I
Arya really putting us in a tight spot commentary wise. How many different ways can we say she's dead with still making it seem like there's a chance? Doing what she can here.
Hey
We
now,
are
they're not dead until I see that so and so has won the match or won the
yeah.
game pop
I
on screen.
I have a lot of respect for Arya. I talked about it, kind of earlier in the match. I believe she is probably dead here. We have this Aldawara for 2 mana because of Imri and Urza. We've got, this force negation. But, I have a lot of respect for, once again, let's see what I can draw and get out of here. And a draw like Shuko, is nice, but we see Arya sort of pack it up there. She realizes there's no chance of winning via the One Ring. And we're gonna get to the sideboarding.
All right. So on Arya's side, we got 4 copies of Force of Negation. That feels like a gimme.
Mhm.
What are we thinking about anything else here? Are we thinking about maybe getting into an Oko fight?
Well, it looked like Arya snap brought in Vexing Baubles. I'm going to
Mm,
assume that's to fight over, cards like the Force Negation and also all of Arnie's free spells, right? Like if Arya plays that on turn 1, all the Chrome Moxes, all the Mox Opals, those are turned off. All the Baubles are turned off. So that is like kind of a Stone Rain-esque card for her. I'm going to be curious to see if she wants, any more Okos because Okos can sometimes be pretty good against opposing Okos. It looks like she's going to decide to trim down that and doesn't want to play that game, which makes a fair bit of sense, right? That's the kind of game Arnie wants to play. So it looks like
yeah.
Arya is trying to clean her deck up to be just faster.
I feel like that's the case with a lot of these decks when you find yourself on the play going into game 2 or 3. It's just you kind of have to say, hey, I don't know if I'm going to be able to disrupt you enough. So I just have to go beep, beep, vroom, zoom.
Mhm.
Whereas being on the draw, we can see some of the cards that Arnie is considering bringing in. Pithing Needle coming in there kind of gets to flesh out the Urza Saga package a little bit more.
Mhm. Yeah, we saw Pith Needle and Spell Pierce get added. We're seeing some Force Negations go away, which makes a lot of sense. Even though Shuko is a big part of the Nadu package, he might just be wanting to fight other battles and doesn't want to hope these cards line up perfectly for him here. As we do see some subtleties coming in, which are once again nice against Nadu.
Yeah, an additional Haywire Might here. Just
Mhm.
really came prepared. It's nice to see. I keep saying this. It is nice to see somebody that wants to interact, even if
Mhm.
their interaction is backed by, you know, 4 copies of Mox Opal, 4 copies of Oko Thief of Crowns. But
Yeah.
we have counter magic. We have bounce spells. This is Magic the Gathering.
You love to see it. I mean, you know what, Bid? If you love it that much, you can leave me my Beanstalk deck when we play, and I can interact a bunch with you too. I'm very fun at parties. You can invite me, and I'll
Mhm.
just kill everything you do the whole game. It'll be a great time.
Okay, that
We can have
sounds
a
pretty
blast.
convincing. That
Yeah,
sounds incredibly convincing. How
I
many
was a
Blood
sales.
Moons do you have in your Beanstalk deck?
Enough.
Okay, good answer. Good answer.
Yep, yep, yep. How many losses do you have to give? That's my question.
Oh, I've got all day, baby.
Great,
I've got
awesome.
all day. As we go into the match, game 2 here. Ooh, God, look at that hand from Arya.
Yeah, this is really nice. One of the things about Arya's Nadu deck with Skull Clamp is it is, a way for her to draw a bunch of cards, but also it's sort of like a bad quote unquote Shuko, right? It takes
Mm.
a mana, but it still triggers the Nadu. So on turn 1 here, Arya, will be able to have the Mox Opal live if she wants to play from hand. She might not, she might, depends on how she wants to play around stuff. But on turn 2, we could see the Nadu hit the board.
Absurd.
Yeah,
I mean, that's
very
why you're
good.
here. You're here
Yeah.
to watch the absurdity of these decks as well as just, the powerhouses.
Mhm.
Um, on Arnie's side, we got, I mean, I don't want to call it fair, but we have something that is a little more slow, a little more controlling, certainly a lot more reactive.
Yeah, definitely kind of, Arnie is sort of like a gear slower than the rest of us, right? He's just a little bit slower. He still has powerful things. I mean, we just saw that happen for the last 10 minutes, right?
Mhm.
But doesn't have those blazing fast draws. So I imagine we're probably going to see him keep this hand. The biggest thing is, he doesn't have anything to pressure Arya, but this hand has a decent amount of interaction, and he does have a lot of really powerful top decks. We talked about the 4 Okos, the One Rings, the Urzas, the Embry to some extent, with cards like Haywire might just do such a good job of turning off the way Nadu abuses it. And I don't believe Arya, has the On-Riders and core to enable it. So Arya needs those sort of enchantments and artifacts to make it work. And so we can be curious to see if Arnie wants to do it here, as it looks like Arnie is on 6 and the players have kept.
All right, starting things off with an Urza Saga here. Gotta imagine the Skull Clamp is joining the table.
Oh. And I love this play from Arya. She knows that Force of Vigor is kind of a card that could be in these sort of decks. In this situation here, Arnie, I believe, isn't playing any, but there are other answers that could stop her if she plays the Mox Opal early. So she wants to hold it and not have Arnie be worried about something like that coming down. Turn 2. Nadu's pretty good.
It's not bad. We also have an interesting spot where, we've talked about how Chromox might not have a huge amount of hits in Arnie's deck. In certain cases where you are like a little stuck on cards. And
yeah.
oh.
I was going to say, Arnie could have actually played Chromox with no imprint and then played Mox Opal and had the Rebuke up. But Arya holding this Mox Opal, he wasn't sure the Nadu could come down. And now Arya gets to sneak in this Nadu with the Shuko coming off the Urza Saga next turn if Arnie doesn't stop it.
That is exactly what I was leading up to. Kind of interesting holding the Chromox here, as not sure how much it's going to do. We do have a Beseiju, which can technically get rid of a Shuko, but there's also that Skull Clamp looming around doing its, I believe as you described it, a bad version of Shuko. Is that correct? Can we get that on record?
Yeah, it's the bad Shuko in this deck. It costs a mana, and also sometimes it kills your friends and only draws 2 cards. So we are going to see Arnie get the bauble, get the Mox Opal going online. I'm going to be curious to see if he wants to, blow up this Urza Saga or wait for the Saga to search and then try and blow up the Shuko and put Arya down on Lance.
Tough call indeed. We are going to see, and decides to upkeep Beseiju.
Okay, it looks like Arnie is saying, I'm pretty cool if you just want to make a construct. And it's kind of one to favor maybe that longer game is what I'm getting the read on here. Arya is like, no, I'm going to do the Nadu thing. I'm good.
We're going to kick things off here with a Malevolent Rumble. Trying to find the Shuko.
Yeah. And the fact she hasn't snap grabbed it yet makes me believe. Oh, sorry, we're countering with the Metallic Rebuke. Excuse me.
Ah.
Yeah.
Yep. None of that. Nope. I'm good. Thank you. I'm just going to keep you off that and let you do some fair Nadu holding a Skull Clamp Magic the Gathering, which draws into the Shuko.
Yeah. And now Arya gets to Legend the Mox Opal, play the Shuko, and we only have the Nadu, and I don't think we'll be able to get down another creature unless we hit the Dryad Arbor here. So Arya's not going to do too much this turn, but she did enough and has a suited up Nadu now.
We do have 2 copies of Dryad Arbor and 3 copies of Misty Rainforest to find the 2 copies of Dryad Arbor, but the initial trigger from the Skull Clamp of the Shuko not finding an additional creature. We're just going to have to wait.
Yeah, we see Arnie has Odawara. Can bounce a Nadu in hand, but Arya has the mana to replay, and it would trigger the Nadu. So a little awkward in that regard. Doesn't really have much going on this game. Doesn't have, has a lot of mana. If we had like the One Ring or whatever, we could play it. But we just, don't have those payoffs. We just have an Urza Saga activation.
So if we're in Arnie's spot here with this Odawara, are we looking to maybe see if Arya kind of commits to casting like a Gilded Goose? I mean, at this point, are we just looking for our opponent to pass priority at an awkward time?
I think so. I think there are a couple different ways you can look at it, but I think when it comes down to it, Arnie kind of has to hope Arya gets unlucky. And by that I mean plays poorly and gets got. And
Yes.
so, from Arya's perspective, it's like, well, that's my best out. And Arya, not really known for doing stuff like that, probably won't do it here. But you have to play for what you can, and it isn't deterministic from this point. It's going to be a lot of looks, and Arya might just be hoping to top deck into something that gives it to him. We know all these 1 mana creatures represent 2 redraws. That is Arnie. And then we can even move the Skull Clamp over to get more draws as Dryad Arbor hits.
Ooh,
Yeah.
a good
And
one.
it's a really good one. I imagine what we'll see happen here is that, I was going to say, Arnie's either going to snap scoop now because there's so many resources and he has nothing, or wait till we see an Nantuko. Respect to Arnie here, just knowing he's dead and picking up his cards. Arya on her 62 card build just had too many cards she wanted.
Now, as someone who has not been playing much of the Nadu summer, is going above 60 that common for these decks?
I would say it's not super common, but sometimes when you're unsure of what to do and you're like have a tight spot and you can see a good argument for both, players will just choose to put an extra card in their deck. We saw Dominic Harvey top 8 Pro Tour Lord of the Rings, just submitting 61. Just because he wasn't sure exactly what cards he wanted in his main deck, and his deck had a lot of tutoring. And so when you have all that tutoring, sometimes the awkwardness of having that extra card doesn't show its head, but the opportunity of having another card in your deck does, right? And so it looks like actually, that is what's going on here. And Arya is trying to figure out if she wants to go below 62, goes down to 61. But it is something that you'll see players do when it's like, these are both really good. I'm unsure which card's better. And instead of potentially losing because of this in my like highly tutorable deck that sees a lot of cards, I'll just take that 0.5% awkwardness that comes up.
I regret to inform it does look like Arya is on 15 cards in the sideboard, 60 in the main.
Yep. Well, yeah. So it's the thing too, where she does not have to have all 15 in her sideboard, right? Like she started game 2 there with 62 in her deck. So on the play, she had some hopes, and it looks like the big thing is Arya is just valuing the Vexing Bauble less on the draw, and that makes sense, right? We talk about the Bauble basically being like a stone rain for the Opals, the Chrome Moxes, and the Mishra's Bauble trying to mana screw Arnie. And now that she's on the draw, she's lessened on that plan because she can't just go like turn 1 Bauble go, which against a lot of Arnie's hands would just make them not function.
Looking at the opening hands here on Arnie's side, we've got a very quick Emery off of a Seetha Synod and a Mox Opal, including a Metallic Rebuke and a couple of Okos. Arya had a hand heavy of lands, opts to mulligan into, thankfully, something that still has a copy of Force of Vigor in it, as well as a very hateful Haywire Might.
Yeah, and Haywire Might, I believe it just says artifact or enchantment. It doesn't say non-land one because they don't really make those anymore. So we might see Arya be blowing up Arnie's land here, as his only real land is Seat of the Synod.
I imagine we're going to get an Emery hitting the table pretty quickly. We could opt to play out a Pithing Needle in the dark here, and then maybe, and that's what we are doing.
Yeah, I like the idea of Pithing Needle. You name something like Shuko. You could also name a fetch. But I don't know if Arya had any actually in her deck, but you can just name that, and then you play the Emery on turn 1 like you talked about, and then you're in a really good spot. And the way Arnie sequences too, it plays around Force of Vigor a bit, right? If Arya wants to use it to prevent something like a turn 1 Emery, then Arnie would have got to keep the Pithing Needle. And, Arya doesn't really want that, as we see Shuko was the name.
Emery milling 2 Sagas, a Gilded Goose, and a Tree of Tails. So we do have a legal target in the graveyard for Emery's activated ability here. As Arya draws card for the turn, and Green Sun, pretty good magic card.
Green Sun's not weak. We might just see here a Haywire Might, then a Green Sun for 0, and look up a Dryad Arbor and try and get to that Nadu via Cord pretty quickly. Of note too, Arya's Haywire Might exiles, so the Ember won't be able to get back to things that Arya wants to blow up, which is kind of nice for her. And it looks like Arya is going after the Pithing Needle on Shuko just right away.
Now, are we looking to salt the earth here? Nope. Opts to keep that Force of Vigor for Other targets. Oh, goes for the upkeep Force of Vigor. Interesting.
Yeah, have to do on the opponent's turn here. And worth noting, Emery can't get the
Mm.
lands back. She can target the lands, like see the side on Tree of Tales, but you can't cast those cards because they're
Can't
lands.
cast them.
Yeah, it's a very weird thing. And so Arnie can get back that Mox Opal, but this is going to really slow the game down and give Arya a chance to get back in it, where, you know, she's one more land off the top away from Green Sun's anything for Nadu.
I imagine at this point in time, Emery is just going to pop a Mox Opal in play. I don't know how much we're worried about our opponent's life total at this stage
Yeah.
of the game.
Yeah, I respect wanting to beat down. Let's get on Mox Opal first. The next turn, 22 turns.
Ooh.
Looks like Arnie didn't know about the land situation and tried to target it. Not the end of the world. We didn't have much else we could target anyways, but a little awkward here as we do see Nadu off the top for Arya.
Yeah, it is not off the top, hell of a draw there, but mind you, Urza Saga, not too bad either.
Yeah. And,
The wording on Emery, a bit tricky.
Yep. Ooh, Malevolent Rumble. That's a good one. That's going to help Arya sort of sculpt for what she's missing. And if she can find something like a Shuka, the Green Thumb Zenith can go the rest of the way.
Finds a collection of lands. One of them happens to be a Dryad Arbor, which is pretty good to get into play, and a backup copy of Nadu.
Yeah, it looks like Arya's maybe hovering Sea of the Synod. Maybe she wants to Green Sun for 1 this turn, and so she's just valuing that. Could also just be kind of hovering over to, like, she's thinking about this one, like, what could this one be? I know I definitely do that sometimes where it's like, I'm not actually going to take this, I think, but I can't think of it. So I'm just going to, like, look at it for a second. She's clearly thinking about everything in her deck and sort of what her draws here are. Obviously, Shuko's the best one. She'll just sort of pop off a clock once that happens. But wants to make sure she doesn't give up any value in the meantime.
Opting to take the seat of the Synod there, just further developing the mana base, and does fire off the Green Sun for, I believe we're going for 1 here. Is there a spot where we find the Sylvan Safekeeper and try to get a little... Oh, all right.
Yeah,
well, that's
I like
answered.
No, I think you get the right idea, and I think maybe that's what Arya was thinking about. Was, do I actually? Oh, we found the Shuko. She could sack it to play. Yeah, I think that's what she was thinking about. Was like, if I take this seed, I can get the Sylvan Safekeeper, and I can start, sacrificing some lands and get some redraws. And now we found the Shuko. We found another Shuko. Not exactly what Arya wants, but this is gonna have to be what she gets for now. We have 1 more activation. We hit a Mox Opal, but we can't do anything else because the Nadu has Shroud, thanks to the Sylvan Safekeeper. So that is going to be the end of it for now. So, if Arnie can get this Oko down, we're being a good spot, but also another Mox Opal.
Not what we're looking to see here.
Yeah, and we see Arnie just concede.
See, now I don't feel so bad for not banning the Nadu deck, or for banning the Nadu deck and not banning the Oops All Spells deck as we go back in the booth here.